All the reading, all the studying, all the drafting, and finally, opening night in the NBA. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast, a sports ethos presentation hosted by yours truly, Aaron Bruski, and FSWA Hall of Famer Steve, Dr. A. Alexander. And welcome to our viewers on Twitter and YouTube. If you are on Twitter, head on over to YouTube. And if you'd like, get some questions answered. We're trying to do more of that toward the ends of shows and some schedule stuff. We are now in our regular season schedule, so we'll be going live early mornings Pacific time, right around 9:30, 9:45 some days. Maybe we'll dilly-dally, go a few minutes late. But that, and then Mondays in the afternoon, we'll have a special episode with Rick Kamla to help listeners make key weekly decisions. And then additionally, Doc and Rick are going to go live every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern time. So get ready for whatever fun that's going to
be. Nobody told me about that.
Oh,
are you serious? I have to pod in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Bro, I got to bed at like 9 o'clock.
Yeah. You go to bed at 9 o'clock, except my text messages say otherwise.
This is not going to work for me.
Yeah, you're out. Okay. Well, I guess Rick's going to go live by himself every Wednesday night. And I'm still going to drop in and tune in because, oh my God, you guys are talking after a Wednesday night slate of games at midnight. That's worth the price of admission, man.
Just like the old days.
Yeah. It just happens to be free, so it's worth the price of free. I can't wait to hear what you have to say about yesterday's draft. We didn't have you online or live. So we'll touch on the Sports Ethos Invitational from yesterday, which was huge. It was great. Thank you guys all for your support there. But before we do that, a quick word from our sponsor, basketball fans. It's that time of year again. The NBA is back. Who would have thought it? From opening tip-off to buzzer beaters, BetOnline has you covered with the best odds, biggest promotions, and live in-game betting on all of your favorite teams. This season, every game matters. BetOnline has every stat, matchup, breakdown, and live odds to bet on during the game. And it's not just the NBA. BetOnline has odds on everything from football, MLB playoffs, NHL, and political props. Head to the website today, get on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. You have to clean that one up. Okay, so yeah, Sports Ethos Invitational Draft. That thing was great, from my perspective. As somebody that was like calling the action, me and Rick were just sort of calling the action. I thought everybody involved was making great picks. I thought it was a very strategic draft. I thought you had a couple kind of GM archetypes that, people were doing things, like Rick's style, I thought was great. Tommy Beer was playing Rick's style. So they were kind of dueling for pop guys. And then everybody else was just sort of solid. There was a 2-center draft. So there was a lot of strategy going on behind getting centers. And I just thought it was great. What were your thoughts as you were watching from the cheap seats over there?
Well, I was drafting, so I was in the middle of it. I didn't have the broadcast on while the draft was going on.
That's good. We talked about you a lot.
I watched it after the fact. I thought it was good. I mean, it was a hard draft. A lot of guys I wanted got taken, right before I picked. And this is another mostly non-Jalen draft for me. In fact, it's all non-Jalen. I didn't get any of my Jalens. But I got a couple centers early. It was a 2-center league, so I thought it was important to do that. I got Jared Jackson, Miles Turner after I took Trae Young and Scotty Barnes. And I got Miles Bridges. I got him in a lot of leagues this year, man. And I don't know. It just seems like he's just set up to do well. I don't know how he really fails. But it was fun. I can't believe Andy Murray, the tennis player, the tennis star, is in that league. I still haven't heard the story about how you're affiliated with Andy Murray, but I'd like to hear it. And then it was cool having Rosenworcel in there and Andre and Rick and all those guys, Tommy Beer and Titus. And, Matt Straub, by the way.
Thank you for that, by the way. Where were you when I needed you yesterday?
I was texting you, but you don't read text. So.
Well, I don't read texts at the middle of the night when I'm just sitting there eating my dinner. I don't read texts while I'm hosting a show because I can't. I could barely make my picks in time. Yeah, no, great draft, great crew of people. Andy and I have been like pen pals for like, I don't know, 5 years or so, 6, 7 years. Just talking fantasy. And of course, as you chat fantasy for years and years, you finally kind of get to know people. And he's a great fantasy player and a great dude, and obviously an amazing, Hall of Fame, one of the greats in the game of tennis. So it's been fun just sort of watching his journey, and then how he's dealt with adversity and injuries and all the things. It's been great there. And yeah, no, I think draft wise, it was for me, it was my first time drafting out of the 12 slot. And I tell you, I play in a lot of leagues where you get to rank the draft pick that you want. And then it's called a Kentucky draft system. And basically whoever gets drawn out of the hat first gets whatever their top pick for a draft slot is. So everybody's obviously taking Wemby this year, or maybe Jokic, but in my leagues, mostly Wemby. And so I'm drafting out of the 12 slot for the first time. And it's always so bad to draft out of like 10, 11, or 12. And, you're getting hit with the value loss. Third round reversal doesn't do nearly enough. It's almost like leagues really, especially with Wemby now, like leagues need to consider fourth round reversal on top of third round reversal. But it was actually pleasant to draft out of the 12 slot. It feels like there's a lot of good first/second round picks falling into that range. The only problem is for the rest of the draft, you really are kind of having to declare who your guys are, go early on them. You don't have flexibility in the way that you can draft. So I felt like my team did fine. I took the plunge on Jalen Duren for the first time this season. I'm decently high on Duren, just not kind of over the moon as I was last year on Duren. So it was good to get him on a team. Got Keegan Murray and Jabari Smith after that, or Herb, Jones. And my team is a very Bruski 150 team. And of course, I drafted all non-centers. So I, waited until the very end to get centers in a 2-center league, which is the ultimate gamble, but that's just how I roll. So that was fun. I just thought the team builds for a lot of guys. At some point in time, I'd like to post these results. If our intrepid producer, Andre Lemush, can post the results of this draft, I think that would be great. As he's telling me that I have a number of excuses, and you guys just don't know what I go through over here. Okay, so let's talk about what we're going to be doing on some of these shows, especially these morning shows. We're going to be looking a lot at the night's action ahead. We have a light slate tonight, which is kind of nice. We're just sort of easing in to that schedule here. And yeah, so we have 2 big games, Steve. The first one is, this is in New York. No, it's New York at Boston. And so a playoff rematch. What's that?
Probably raising the banner, right?
Yeah, raising the banner. I'm sure Jason Tatum will function a tear out of one of his eyes. That would be great. What I got to giggle at you guys. And
I love that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would have loved this game a lot more if they hadn't made the trade. I would have loved this game even if Julius Randle, who's sort of my like nemesis, and don't tell Rick Hamill that. I don't want him to know because he's like Julius Randle's biggest fan.
Dude, I never draft Julius Randle ever.
Rick is all about it, but he's basically decided that percentages are worthless and he's just going to go for pop. And I respect it because at the end of every 30 deep season, which I haven't really talked about much on this show, we should probably talk about a lot more. He's always at the top of the standings. And so, for anybody who wants to besmirch somebody who's taking Julius Randle, I would just point to the hardware for Rick. And it always makes me think twice whether my strategy and head-to-head is, the right one, or if his sort of modified punt percentages strategy is indeed the right strategy. But I would have enjoyed this game a lot more if Julius Randle was in the house. I like the Villanova connection, and you take out the heart and soul of it and Dante DiVincenzo. And I think this is going to be low key bad for the Knicks, and maybe some bad omens early on with, DiVincenzo, barking at at Brunson, and then you got Josh Hart's like, I don't know what my role is, and you got Mikal Bridges, who was just traded for 5 million draft picks, and there's videos of a hitch in his jump shot running around the internet.
Was that real?
Looking like Ben Simmons, and I'm starting to ask questions like, does he got TOS like me? Because things like that happen to people who have TOS.
That video didn't even look real.
Like, let's look at the people who've had some version of TOS in the NBA. And I'm not 100% sure on the Markelle Fultz situation, because I just haven't looked into it enough to be able to declare, yeah, that was TOS. I think it was TOS. Not sure. TOS, for those of you who don't know, is when nerves get compressed underneath your clavicle. There's many different versions of it, but it basically ruins your hands and arms. I've been through that for the last 5 years, had a surgery to remove a rib. Kyle Anderson had that same surgery, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but pretty sure the reporting would hold up there. And if you look at these guys' jump shots, they've completely altered them. And you're looking at Mikal Bridges, and I'm sure we would have heard about something. I'm sure he wouldn't have been traded for 4 first-round draft picks if he had something like that going on, because it's kind of a career killer. And but he has that look about him. That hitch in that jump shot was just crazy. He just stopped at the top and paused and waited. And
it reminds me of like Markelle Fultz and who was the guy that the guy with 3 names that got drafted by Charlotte, I think, like 10 years ago.
Was it 3 first names?
No.
He
just had 3 names. Anyway, it just looks terrible. It almost looks like it's like not real. And it's terrifying.
Stiff. It's stiff. It's like way out in front of his body, and it's like got very little. It's just stiff. Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. So I guess that's what, 1 first name. So I guess we can trust him.
That's him. Yeah, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. That's it.
That was a nasty jump shot, that Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. If only.
That's why it reminds me of Mikal's.
Well, I'm sure it's terrifying Knicks fans. So it really is this groundswell of like that. They had all the vibes. They had every single vibe in the NBA belonged to the New York Knicks, and now none of the vibes. And now
they still got vibes. You're overreacting.
Well, you trade my Dante DiVincenzo, and there's going to be bad things that happen on this show, because I can't have that. But at any rate, so tonight's game, what are you looking for? Let's talk about the top end guys. Like, who have you been excited about on the 2 teams, and what are you looking for out of them in tonight's game?
Well, Derek White's points, rebounds, and assists prop is like, I don't want to misquote it, but it's low. And I like that over. We were just talking about on the radio before I came on here. Cats and Tatum's and Jalen's are all pretty high. I think here, the Knicks still have pop, dude. Cat looks great. Cat's the only big man walking in New York. Precious Achiuwa, if you haven't heard, gone for a couple weeks. It's all Cat all the time right now.
Do you think that they're going to try to establish him early on? Like that this is the game where they say, hey, we got to get Cat going?
I mean, I think they need to. The thing that scares me, though, is it's at Boston. It's opening night. It's his first game as a Knick. Those lights are going to be shining bright. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And I don't consider Cat one of those guys that handles a lot of pressure really, really well. I think he does better when there's no pressure. But, I mean, Boston's going to be throwing what? Al Horford at him? Cat could have a field day.
I don't know. I'll take the other side of that equation. I think Al Horford is going to do quite well against Cat, but Cat gets his stuff in so many unique ways. I don't think it's going to be up against Al Horford so much. And to your point, Al Horford has lost a few steps, so I don't want to, build up Al Horford as if he's like indestructible. Maybe he got fresh legs, but Cat, I think they do want to get him to go off. Cat, I saw go like 6 or 7 overall in a high stakes draft the other day. I had to like wipe my eyes clean. Like, did I just see Cat go 7th or whatever it was in a high stakes draft? So people are obviously expecting big things. I think if New York loses this game, and it's very possible that they do, Boston is kind of good if you hadn't noticed. And I think it might start some downward negative momentum for that team. I think that New York Knicks squad might have like a first 20 games or so where they're really trying to find themselves and maybe even work out whatever the bad juju is from getting rid of a Dante DiVincenzo in that situation. You mentioned Derek White. Like, the thought I keep having with Derek White is like, do we just not know what his ceiling is? And does he have like another level this season and maybe even another level next season? Like, how heavy are you going in on that? Are you going to go in on that prop on Derek White? You think this is kind of a lock, or you just sort of semi interested in it?
I mean, I like it. It makes sense to me. The more I watch Derek White play, the less I like Jaylen Brown, and the less I like Jason Tatum. Like, Derek White looks like one of the better players on that team, honestly.
You know who I'm looking for to watching? Yeah, me too. I actually caught some Derek White this year. I thought that maybe he would go too early because of last year's amazing year, but no, he actually fell a couple times. Andre, if you could restate that point, I would like to touch on that a little bit later back in our own private chat here. The player that I want to look at for Boston is Drew Holiday. Drew Holiday was falling to like 90 in some high stakes drafts. And it was like, whoa, Drew Holiday's still on the board. That's kind of crazy. And then he didn't make it back to me. It would have easily been a draft at that point, I think. But I'm just kind of curious to see if he's in great shape. He was in great shape during the playoffs. Who knows what happens over the offseason? But he being so much of a faller in drafts, he's kind of been a perennial top 40 to 60 guy, I would say, if he's playing in Boston, but usually in Milwaukee, a perennial top 40 guy. And if he's in the best shape, like I thought he was in the best shape of his career during the playoffs last year. If he's in the best shape of his career again, I don't think he's a top 80 or 90 guy. I think he's a top 60 guy. So I'm kind of curious to see if Drew goes off tonight. Is there anybody else on the Celtics or New York squad that, maybe even like down roster that you're excited about or keeping an eye on or looking to see what they do in tonight's game?
Well, I'm starting Al Horford and Andre Drummond in 30 deep, so I'm kind of psyched about that. Kind of psyched to see what Al Horford's going to do. I'm
curious to see what they do with the center position there in Boston, like who the backup is to Al Horford.
You know what? I don't really know who it's going to be. Is Cornette still there? I don't even have their.
Yeah, well, the Cornette thing is interesting. He jumped center the other day, and he's been like 3-4 years ago. He was like this low key or under the radar fantasy. Fantasy nerds like us were like looking for the next great thing. And then all of a sudden, Luke Cornett starts popping up on the radar, and he's got a great combo of steals and blocks and hit an occasional three. And then it just sort of disappeared. Like that's just not a thing anymore. And now he's sort of back, and he seems like he's in the team's good graces. And then Namish Keita has been sort of on my radar, at least being in Sacramento. He didn't really stick around in Sacramento, and he found his way to Boston. And I actually think he's going to do great things there this year. But he's got to get into the rotation. He's got to get a consistent rotation spot. And then it's like Xavier Tillman's picked up a little steam lately in the local media reports. So, it's a backup to the backup kind of a situation. But I think, especially with Kristaps Porzingis being out for the entire year, there is some hidden value over there. Any streamers that you're looking at for tonight's game? Have you been thinking in that direction at all?
Streamers. Day one, talking streamers.
I know. It's a sickness, right?
I love Miles McBride, Deuce McBride. I'd like to stream him, but I mean, there's 2 games. There's not. I'm not going to be looking to be streaming tonight. I do have a DFS. Got some FanDuel going already, so I'm fired up about that.
You guys have DFS and FanDuel going?
Oh yeah, but I'm excited about Deuce McBride, and there's all this. Josh Hart doesn't know what his role is. Whatever. Josh Hart's going to be fine. He's going to go play 40 minutes. He's going to ball out.
Do you have any DFS recommendations from this game? Like, who's your best DFS play from this game?
My best.
Break out the protractor.
Well, yeah, I'm gonna have to break out my team. I set this thing like 4 o'clock in the morning while you weren't answering my text.
Told you were awake. I've known you for what, 15 plus years now? I don't think I've seen you or heard of you go to bed before 1 a.m.
No, it doesn't happen. Deuce McBride, I think.
A lot of ringer industry,
bucks.
not media, but like high stakes ringers, they're all about McBride this year. I get it. Like, I think McBride showed us a lot in the playoffs last year, just in general over the course of the season. I think Tibbs, he sort of passed the Tibbs trust test. So I get it. I definitely, and then this would be a good time for him to come out there and make some shots. I mean, if Mikal Bridges got whatever going on, if that's a thing or not, I don't know if it's a thing, guys.
Dude, that's what I'm most excited about tonight is watching Mikal Bridges.
I know. Yeah. Actually, that might be the number one thing I'm looking for in this game, because a lot of times these clips, they can just be, blown out of proportion, and like a preseason shooting sample size. That how many times is that like not panned out, or it's just it's a ripe ground for overreaction. It's New York. I mean, that's a big amount of draft picks that he got traded for. I get it. But I mean, it could be a really big deal, because if he, for whatever reason, has something he's dealing with, I mean, it really, really takes the team and dynamic. And I mean, with OG Anunoby, I'm fading him this year. He did look like he was in a little bit better shape. Then obviously the last playoffs, he was dying out there, dragging his leg up and down the court. So that's not the great measurement. But even in the first third of the games prior to the playoffs, when he was with New York for the first time, it was like, I don't know, man. I don't think he's that guy. Offensively is the concern. If you've got he and Bridges, and they're not really breaking the defense down at all, you're just putting a ton of pressure on Jalen Brunson. And Cat, of course, will fling it up, but we'll see. Any other thoughts on this game before we move on to Minnesota?
I do have our guy.
Oh, our DF. What we got?
Julius Randle is my starting power forward tonight in DFS.
So, formats, everything,
dude. So I was just on ESPN radio before we did this, and the big question I got, the big opening night NBA question was, will Bronny James play? And if so, at what point does he enter the game? And I was like, I could not care less about that question. I don't know. I don't care.
The sad thing is we could just splash Bronny James's name across the little headline wallpaper that you have to use in order to perform well in an algorithm, and just say Bronny James and probably get more views. Yay algorithms, everybody. Yay algorithms. I would say Bronny James does not play. There's got to be a prop bet at Bet Online.
Oh, yeah.
Will Bronny James play? The only counter argument to that is, do they want to kind of get that out of the way real quick and just say, oh, we did it and it's done. And then maybe even they can play together, and then he can go to the G League as Andre.
My answer was yes, he plays, and he plays in the second quarter.
Oh, really?
Their answer was he plays, but only after Minnesota opens up a 25-point lead.
Ouch. I don't think that one seems unlikely to me, because then it's sort of like, okay, you're sticking him out there in an embarrassment situation. But who knows? I can't read that situation. I think it's
I
all up
think
to
they just
LeBron.
want to. I think they don't want this distraction hanging over their head for too long.
So you think they get it out of the way? So here this is how it happens, folks. It just sucks you in. Like, why we got to talk about Bronny James? Because something.
I would actually maybe care about it, but didn't Ken Griffey and Ken Griffey Jr. play in the same game for the same team?
I think, aren't they attending the game? I think that's what's going on.
And they're going to the game, but like if this had never been done before, I could get behind it, but I just don't care.
I have a follow-up question. I'm not even going to go to it. It's actually kind of interesting. No, all right, fine. Wasn't Ken Griffey Sr. the manager of that team at the time?
I think you might be onto something there.
I think he was, and that's
a player manager,
which is a great link to LeBron. Isn't he the coach of the Lakers? Like
Pete Rose was R.I.P.
Sorry, JJ Redick.
Pete Rose very was
unfair to say. You're most definitely the coach. You have all of the control. You can tell LeBron to sit. That will happen.
Pete Rose was also a player coach, and LeBron James a player coach. So yes, dude.
And Jackie Moon, player coach owner.
I was making fun of Mike Brown not coaching the Cleveland Cavaliers like 15 years ago. LeBron was coaching that
what's
team.
Great about that is Mike Brown is one of the best coaches in the NBA, and he's like, to kind of go from that to where he's at right now. That's pretty good stuff. Okay, let's talk Minnesota and Los Angeles, the actual stuff, the actual things. Okay, at the top of this, well, obviously no longer Cat. Anthony Edwards, Julius Randle are big names. Let's see, Rudy Gobert. Who else? Obviously LeBron, AD. Which one of these guys? Yeah, which one of these guys is like on your radar because they've been a part of the draft season? Push up to the regular season start. Like, which one has got your name written all over it?
Well, Anthony Edwards, obviously. And I love Dante DiVincenzo. I think maybe more than even you do. And Mike Conley. Mike Conley's one of those cheap fantasy point guards you get at the end of your draft. And he could produce. So, and how does Julius Randle not go off being in Minnesota? Now, Naz Reid could hold him up a little bit. And if I love Naz Reid. I'm kind of sad that Julius is there. I wish it was the Naz Reid show.
I could get behind that because I want to just see what Naz Reid can be. Like, it feels like he has the potential to be like almost like point Naz Reid, like just handle a lot on the perimeter and get to the rack. And he's not going to be able to do that with Julius Randle out there. That's just not going to happen, especially when you factor in Rudy Gobert is also going to be on the floor a lot. That's rough business. Dante might low key unlock that team a little bit, but I'm definitely watching to see what that offense looks like, take turns wise. Like, Anthony Edwards is I'm watching a little of that Netflix stuff, the starters or whatever, and there's nothing new in there. We all know what's going on, but like, he is just that dude. And I kind of wonder if he's going to try to take Julius Randle and just kind of break him out of his shell. And I think for Julius Randle, his issue has been, really, it's a deep one. It's probably not able to be talked about in a small amount of time, but like, it feels like if he could just find his lane and stay in his lane and not try to be a volume 3-point shooting, handle all the time point guard. If he was a third option, second option, which he is now in Minnesota, I wonder if Anthony Edwards can kind of just like really talk trash enough to Julius Randle to get him to get into that lane and buy in. If that happens, then I think this team's good and interesting. And I think that they'll be kind of where they were before the trade. Absent that, I don't think it's going to happen. I think Minnesota is going to be kind of on the decline, and I think that there's going to be a little bit of disappointment in the air, and then they'll probably part ways with Anthony, probably with Julius Randle, and we'll see what they rebuild like. You know,
you are down on the Knicks and you are down on the Wolves.
I am. I think they both made massive mistakes with the deal. I'm bummed for both of them.
I don't think so. I think they both made good moves.
I want to curl in a ball and cry for both teams. It was a terrible decision, but you know, actually, well, no, I don't have any silver lining. I was going to go for a silver lining, but you like it. That's a silver lining.
I mean, dude, if you don't think Anthony Edwards is ready to come out and take on the entire world tonight,
I can't wait for that.
He's ready to go.
Well, and these are actually pretty good matchups. Normally, I don't get excited about opening night matchups too much because it's, you know, sometimes it's just like forced and manufactured, and you know, like it's like, I don't know, it's slow and teams are out of shape and all of that. But like New York's got a lot to prove. I think Boston's got a tiny chip on their shoulder after all this summer stuff. You know, Team USA didn't go great for the Boston Celtics other than Derek White. And New York's obviously got all their stuff. Minnesota's got their stuff. Hell, it should have been New York and Minnesota for the opener. That would have been real smart. But and then LeBron, like, you're going to watch Anthony Edwards knows what tonight is about. He's going to try to probably put LeBron in a poster and take the mantle in one game, I would think. But maybe that's an overstatement. Anybody like Anthony Davis, I think, is an interesting one. So many people relied on Anthony Davis at number 5, especially in 2 center leagues. So that's something that I just am personally going to be kind of watching. Like, how's he moving? Does he look healthy? Is he, you know, the Anthony Davis that we all know and love? That to me, like, if he's not moving really well, I would wonder, like, how much is that going to impact his stats? There hasn't been a direct correlation to, you know, the way he moves and the stat output, because there was times when he was really hitting the stats hard that it just didn't look like he was all there. Like, he was just slow and kind of injured and lethargic. And so it's not a guarantee, but so many people put their faith in Anthony Davis, and I faded him this season a little bit. Yeah, I pretty much faded him.
Yeah,
and I just personally,
I took him every time I had the 5th pick.
Yeah. But here's the thing. The strategy's fine. Like, the 5th pick has been a nightmare in drafts this season, as has been the 6th and the 7th picks. Not that I know anything about that. So I get it. I mean, he's a big man. If you're in a 2 big man league, that's a very big premium for you. Even in a single big man league, he has the potential to be a top 5 fantasy play. Most of the guys in the discussion just don't even have that potential. You know, they just don't have the pop to get there. Anthony Davis does. What about any down roster players? Like, are you fired up about Dalton Connect?
A little bit.
Yeah. Did you get him on a team?
I'll tell you what, my buddy Scott Lynn came and visited me last year, and he goes, "Have you watched Tennessee basketball?" And I said, "No." He said, "We got this kid, Dalton Connect, and he can ball." And he just turned my radar on to Dalton Connect. And I started watching him. I was like, yeah, he's right. He can ball. He had a huge preseason game the other day. I have a lot of Dalton Connect late in drafts. And, you know, there's only 2 games tonight. So he's playing. He's in my lineups. And I'm hoping for some goodies. And I'm hoping, you know, I've also got him super cheap in DFS. But I'm also, you know, Rui Hachimura and Max Christie. We've been talking about Max Christie for like 2 years. Is this a year we finally see him?
They definitely been talking about him, and for what it's worth, he's been pretty good. You know, pretty good at the bottom of the NBA is amazing, by the way, but like pretty good. Connect, it feels like if he has a big game tonight, it might just be the case that they go, okay, you're a bigger part of this team than we were able to project, even internally. Um, sometimes this stuff happens like that. Like, think about all the players selected at like 30, in the real NBA draft, and they just come into the league, and you're just like, oh, they're good. And then in the beginning of the year, you're like, well, how's this actually going to pan out? Like, then they just take that spot by the horns and it's theirs. I don't know that Dalton Connect has a great path to get to say 25 plus minutes per game, but he certainly showed in the preseason that the moment's not too big for him. And let's say he does go off tonight somehow. Would you pick him up in a standard size league? And then would you sell him immediately because it can't keep up?
I mean, I drafted him everywhere. So.
Oh, you drafted him everywhere.
I have a lot of Dalton Connect.
Wow. So it would be like sacrilegious.
If he's sitting out there on your waiver wire, and you've got somebody you can put on injured reserve or somebody you drafted but you really don't like, I mean, it might be worth a shot, man. I think he's going to play.
Premium subscribers knew about all that. I didn't know the extent of your Dalton Connect issues. When I say issues, they're good issues. I think he's a good ball player. I think he's the type of player that there's so many examples of players like him that have made it after that sort of slow, roll to start the NBA. I wonder how that profiles with the Lakers. I mean, LeBron sort of puts a stamp of approval on players. And again, if that's the thing, if it's a big game tonight, I just wonder if he just sort of leapfrogs certain people and they just decide, hey, we need that offense and you're going to be in there for 25 plus minutes per game. And let's see how that works out. Anybody else that you're watching on either side, Minnesota or Los Angeles? It doesn't even have to necessarily be for tonight, just like players you're curious about.
Not really. Like you, I think my focus tonight is going to be on Mikhail's jump shot, Anthony Davis and LeBron James bodies and how they look out there. Dalton Connect. I do want to see Jason Tatum manufacture a tear when they raise the banner. And I do want to see what Derek White looks like in that offense. And also Al Horford, because Kristaps Porzingis is gone for a long time. And we're going to get a lot of Al Horford. And after Al Horford, I'm not sure I trust any of those centers. So I think Al needs to prepare for a heavy workload this year.
Well, actually, I like both of the guys. Like, I didn't really think Kornet would be in a discussion just based on prior to play. But he's gotten a lot of pub lately out of Boston, like in the local Boston media, mostly as just being a character, like a cut up. I mean, he's the guy that invented the jump from any spot on the court to try to get the shooter's attention defense, which is hilarious and who knows, maybe effective. But it's almost as if he got some more athleticism, just noticing that in the preseason action. And if that's the case, for whatever reason, if he got more athletic, if he was able to put on some weight, if that proposition somehow works out a little bit better, then he becomes an option. I don't think that's the case. I mean, I'm having a hard time seeing him stay with NBA point guards and, not get cooked. But Keita, I think Keita is legitimately like a good player that he's young and he's got a little bit to go, but I think that you can put Keita out there and get good. He fits well with that defense. I think he makes that defense pretty effective. So I think if there's going to be a place they turn, that it's going to be Keita. Otherwise, in the nightcap game, I want to see D'Angelo Russell. Just want to get like kind of a gut check for him. I kind of think he's grown up. He's not the immature D'Angelo Russell from his rookies and early seasons. I want to see just how he feels about things in LA, because he's clearly the odd man out, and that can wear on a player like that. In Minnesota, I want to see if Minot, I don't even know if I'm saying that right. I'm pretty sure it is Minot. I want to see if Minot gets into any sort of a decent role. He had an amazing preseason. He had some big games, and it just feels like he's on the rise there in Minnesota. Not seeing him getting taken anywhere in drafts. And, if you like yourself some Ryan Dunn, check out Minot. So I'll be watching that. And just getting settled in. There are 2 high stakes drafts for me today. I got 1 more tomorrow, so I'm very much still in draft mode. If you guys are in draft mode out there, get yourself a B150, get yourself a draft tracker. It is outstanding to be able to see 5 million moves ahead. That's what the draft tracker does. Also, the fantasy pass is up and cooking. We're going to be releasing a new app here in the coming days. Premium features for subscribers within the app will be coming within weeks. This stuff is going to be kind of next level. So keep an eye on that for subscribers. Also, our tools, they're all backed by B150 projections, and B150 projections take 400 hours of constant evaluation, film, using experience, corporate knowledge, so to speak. So all of your day-to-day decisions, add, drop, sit, start, trade, all that good stuff. There's a tool for it here at sportsethos.com. So check all of that out. Steve, you got any parting words for the people before we take off?
We somehow only mentioned Peyton Pritchard 1 time and Sam Hauser 0 times in this podcast. And they're both guys who are on deeper league teams.
I'm going to be upset about that, actually. That should be something we're talking about.
I'm a big Peyton Pritchard guy. He was on my 30 deep last year. I think he's on my 30 deep team this year as we try to defend the title. Is he? No, he's not. He's on my brew. He's on my Sports Ethos League teams. But Sam Hauser is also a guy I think you can get very cheap in DFS tonight. And he should outperform his price.
I think people are on to Hauser, but I don't know if they're on to Hauser. And Hauser, it's hard to project him with like a massive season, but if like 1 or 2 things happens and you get some key injuries in Boston, I think Hauser can do a lot more than people just think he's a 3-point shooter. And they just sort of attribute it like this guy's in the league because he can shoot threes, and that's that. I think he's got way more game than that. I'm not talking like Magic Johnson or anything like that, but I think he can put the ball on the ground a couple times, make some plays. I think he can defend much better than people think. I think he's more physical than people think. And then, just all around basketball wise, I think it wouldn't be shocking if he stepped into something better if some events happen down the road. What about some early season fantasy advice, Doc? Like, you've only done this a couple years. Like, what do you tell people in week 1 all the time?
If you're unsure about a guy and then you see somebody light it up and you want to make the move, do it. Like, don't be tied. And don't go cutting, your top 5 picks from your draft. But if you got guys at the end of your draft where you're like, I just took him because I didn't know what to do, and you see somebody light it up and they're available on your waiver wire, run and don't walk to go get them, because every week that goes by, the waiver wire is less and less attractive.
Yeah, that's I couldn't have said it better. Like the first 3 weeks, you really got to lock in because you're trying to decide, is that thing that I see, is it real? And that's happening up and down the roster all over the place. So like the savvy fantasy GM, you're really locked in. You are really trying to just dial in as much as possible, using tools, getting advice, talking on Twitter, just doing everything that you can to try to figure out what we're seeing. Is it real? And, can you lean into that? Can you fade that? Can you make trades? Can you make the big waiver wire play? Can you do all of that stuff the right way? I love the first 3 weeks of the season, if you guys can't tell. Okay, that's going to do it for us. We ran a little long here. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Andre, for another great production. Thank you, Doc, for sitting there and putting up with me. And thank you all for all that great advice and all that great support that you guys gave. Also, an amazing year with sales. Thank you guys so much for all of your support as we try to do something special here in the industry. This has been Fantasy NBA Today, presented by Bet Online, a sports ethos presentation. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, be well.